The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Café. This is the United Podcast Network.
And welcome to the Writer's Block Podcast. I'm Mandra Biscornet, and I believe everyone has a story to tell. What's yours?
Deborah Monk, empowering you to find your creative voice.
And Shelly Devlin, inspiring you to find your why.
We have everybody today.
We do. We're all here.
Nice?
Yay.
Well, we've got a great show for you today because we have covered great beginnings, sagging middles. So what's left but the fantastic endings?
Yay!
So we're going to talk about how to wrap up your story so that it leaves the readers feeling content and yet wanting even more of your writing. And we'll also spend some time talking about bad endings because that's just as important to know on what not to do.
Absolutely.
So Deb.
Yes.
How do we make a fantastic ending?
That wasn't my job. My job is serious.
Oh, serious. Okay.
Okay. No, how do we
Well,
make
we had some to
but
read
still a fantastic
or,
ending to make me hooked to get the next book in the series.
In
Right?
order to have a
Okay.
fantastic ending, does it have to be always happy? Or could you
That
have
is a very,
a sad
very good point.
and fantastic ending?
And I think that's
could.
where we often get confused, that a lot of people think that you have to have a happy ending. And if you're writing romance, that is required. It's literally part of their format. You have to have a happy ending is what makes it a romance. If it's not a happy ending, then it's not considered a romance.
Be a
That's
tragedy.
so much to say.
Be a tragedy, and it would be real life.
But it has to be, more important than happy is it has to be satisfactory. You have to deliver what you promise at the beginning of the book. And if you're good, you don't only deliver what you promise, but you deliver more. Maybe it's a twist. Maybe it's a surprise. I think that you have to be willing to examine whether your ending is right. And a perfect example of that is Fatal Attraction. Fatal Attraction, they had finished filming. Apparently, the original ending was Dan was framed for murder and carted away by the police. And they did the test market. They did the test runs, and the audience hated the ending.
Really?
Absolutely hated it. And this is a quote of what the test audience said. Quote, unquote, terminate the bitch with extreme prejudice. So they were not happy with him being carted away, framed for the murder. They wanted her to die. Now, Glenn Close completely hated that. Initially, she refused to reshoot it. She fiercely protested the cliche about the female psycho. The director was also repulsed by the new ending of killing the woman. However, apparently $1.5 million was offered to him, and he changed his mind. He agreed to reshoot it.
That money was talking.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing is, the new ending has the Michael Douglas character drowning Glenn Close and then his wife shooting her as well. Glenn Close was dunked over 50 times and got an infection in her eyes and nose. However, she did receive, I think it was an Oscar.
So was it worth it for an eye infection?
Well, but
An Oscar and a giant paycheck.
And she had to do something she didn't want to do.
Right.
Well, but the point is that a lot of feminists didn't like the ending. They didn't like the woman portrayed, and they thought that the mental illness aspect of that character was never really covered. But it was a financial success,
right?
And so the audience was more satisfied with that ending. So I think you have to be
tough,
willing.
though, because with a book, we don't have a test market.
Right.
You're going to have
well, you kind of do your writing group.
True.
That's true. That's true. But you can't make everybody happy either.
Right. I know with my first novel, Searching for Julia Stone, I had quite a few readers reach out to me and ask. Some have asked for a sequel.
Yes.
They want to know if Julia and Michael stay together. Mm-hmm. And when I was writing the ending, I did have that feeling of that was what I should answer on the surface level. But down deep, that really wasn't, the question wasn't, were they a good couple? That wasn't the original question. It had to be that she had come to terms with her own secrets and be comfortable and forgive herself.
And for the record, I'm Michael. And,
I was just
we're still together 10 years later.
Who hasn't read the book?
So there's your answer.
I was waiting to see what was going to happen
there. So do you
there.
feel like that ending answered that question? Your ending?
I definitely answered the question.
So
yes.
that a reader would feel complete, like complete
we
enough.
felt complete. I read it, and I mean, I read it on vacation in the most perfect, atmosphere.
Right.
But I read it, but I wanted more. I wanted to know, what else happened to them. Mm-hmm. Not even did they end up together. I kind of figured they were going to stay together, but I wanted to know where they went from here.
So how does that speak to a series? Right? Because because
I wanted Searching for Julia Stone Part 2.
Well, that would definitely be interesting. So that does bring us to series.
Yes.
And to me...
See, I'll get you there.
Thank you, Mandra.
You're such a good interviewer.
That takes us to Hunger Games. I read The Hunger Games when my daughter was in middle school because I thought, how is it possible that someone has written a book about kids being put into an arena and they have to kill each other? I just couldn't understand how that could be a commercial success. But when I read the book, I did like it, and I was amazed at how she managed to pull that scenario off. But the first book of Hunger Games, she did a phenomenal job. To me, it was the best I've ever seen of setting you up for a series. Because what she did is that the question in the book is, Katniss is put into the arena. She steps in place of her sister. She goes in. And the question is she going to be the only one who survives out of, I forget, was it 25 kids? Or I forget how many kids were put into the arena. And they have to fight each other till the death. So the question is, does she survive or does she not? And at the end of the book, she does survive. And I thought it was the last page, but I went to the library because I apparently don't have the book, which I will go and order. But it wasn't the last page. There were a few more chapters. So she answers the question because not only does she survive, but she manages to beat the gamekeepers at their own game because she manages to save her let's call him Peeta, her best friend. And earn potential romantic interest. So she manages to survive and to save someone, which theoretically at the beginning of the book. So not only did she deliver the promise of Katniss survives, she wins the games. She over-delivered by making her able to figure out a way to save someone else, which had never been done before. But then she flips it on the head in the next few chapters, just a few more pages, are about the fact that the gamekeepers are pissed that she tricked them. And so now the question is, are they going to even let her live? But even more importantly, not only are they going to let her live, because in the games, it was only her life that was at risk because she had stepped in for her sister. So her sister was safe. But now the question is, are they going to punish her family? So she not only did she answer the question of the original book, delivered more than she promised, she then set up an even greater question with much more at stake, much
that
more
wants
at
you
risk.
to read more. That you have
and at that point, you're in love with her and her whole family,
right? And you want to find out what happens.
Yes. So to me, that was the epitome of holy moly writing, of a fantastic ending that also served as an incredible launchpad for a new beginning.
Yeah, excellent.
Good job, Deb.
Good job, Deb.
Thanks.
Good job,
Yeah, I was kind of
Deb.
excited about this.
Shell, what do you got over there?
So when I was researching these fantastic endings, I went on emotion because I went to my bookshelf and I thought, well, that's funny. I have 3 of James Patterson's book shots. I have 4, somebody borrowed a book, of my Mitch Abram. And so I realized that they must have done something in the book to make me fall in love with the author to get their next book. And I do remember when I read the 5 People You Meet in Heaven, I was like, I need the next book. Mm-hmm. And it's out. His 5 People You Meet in Heaven.
I know. Did you have it yet?
2. I don't have it yet. Have it yet.
What was it about that ending that
made you want more
even before there was more?
Just set you up for all these questions that were unanswered that were actively going on in the end.
So were you satisfied?
Right.
Or were you frustrated at the
I wasn't
ending?
frustrated. I was satisfied and wanting more. Just like Julia Stone. Satisfied and wanting more. Yes.
Well, maybe Mitch and I should write Julia Stone Goes to Heaven.
You should, for sure.
Mitch, if you're listening, I'll be glad to co-author anything with you.
But see, Julia Stone, though, that ending is different from Well-Behaved Woman because I didn't feel like we needed more there. Like I felt the way that ended in the cemetery, right? In the funeral with the women kind of coming together, finding that common thread.
And healing the family wounds.
And healing those generational wounds kind of brought everything full circle. You felt complete.
Right.
You didn't need...
Agreed. Yes.
Anymore. Mm-hmm. And that was perfect.
Right. Mm-hmm. I love the ending of that.
Yeah. No, that was a great ending.
Yeah.
And kind of foreseen. There was a nice
Right.
twist
There's
there.
an amazing twist, which I don't take credit for. I was driving down the road one day. It was 28 in Salem. And I was driving and I sort of had a sense of, I knew it was going to be in a funeral. And I also wanted, I personally wasn't totally sure who was going to be dead. But I had,
Interesting.
I know. And it wasn't until
You're
I was,
such a pantster.
it wasn't until I was writing the book that who ended up being dead
Yeah.
wasn't even on my mind. That wasn't even an option.
You blew your own mind.
I blew my own mind as I was writing it. But when I was driving down 28 and I'm thinking, all right, she's walking down the funeral and I don't know who's dead, I was actually crying in the car.
Really?
Wait.
You're kidding.
You're surprised?
Jonathan?
There's two places
None
that
of
she
us are
cries on the
surprised.
regular.
In the shower,
car
in
and
the
the shower.
car. We know.
TMI. We know way too much about
Deb's in
me.
the car. What's she doing? Probably crying.
Not real. No. Shower, it's 50-50, but
Yeah.
back to
Speaking of
endings.
crying,
Yes.
the last lecture.
Perfect segue.
Right?
We did that on purpose.
You did do that on purpose. This had the most incredible ending. And I think maybe because, of course,
For those of
it's-
us that are listening and not watching
know the
on
book.
TV, which you're not even pointing at the camera, so they can't see it either. What book are you talking about?
Where is this camera you speak of?
The
Where is that
last
camera?
lecture. It's there and it's there, girls.
Yeah,
We're kidding.
Yeah.
right? The last lecture. Because I don't know if obviously it's a heartfelt story, but when he ends this book, you think you're going to start this book with this guy. You know that he's dying.
Right. On
You
the
know
first
that it's
page, he
his-
tells
on the
you
first
that.
page, he tells you it's
Right.
going to be his last lecture at Carnegie Hall. And other people do their last lecture as professors that are leaving.
Right.
So you think it's the last job he's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But he's quoted in an interview of saying that I wanted to do the last lecture as if my life was bottled up in a bottle and sent out to sea and it washed in for my kids. And in the end, he talks about how that being a head fake. It's a head fake where you think you're reading it because this is his last job he's going to do.
Right.
But what he's doing is he's doing this literally as his legacy for his kids.
Well, because right on page 1, it tells you he's been diagnosed. He has a terrible disease and he's going to die.
Mhm.
And it's months or weeks away at that point.
Right. And the entire book. He starts on page 1 with it. So I mean,
Right.
it's through the entire book.
So I have multiple copies of that on my bookshelf because I give it to family when they're graduating from high school.
Mhm.
I never got to the end because I assumed the end was he was dead and I didn't really want that to happen. So is he dead at the end?
No,
Isn't he the guy writing it?
Yes, but page 1, he tells you he's
Yeah, but he can't be dead at the end of the book if he wrote the book.
He does have to finish the book.
He does have to finish the
He does
book.
have to finish the book.
And then I died, and he
Or it
puts
could
the
have
pen
it
down
could
and
have
he
been written by
expires. I don't
somebody
think so.
else. It could
Could have had an epilogue or something.
Yeah.
his wife.
Right. His wife did
Actually,
she wrote a book.
She wrote a. Oh, right. Yeah.
She did write a
Yeah.
book, and it wasn't as good as his.
Oh,
Sorry, but it was just for a different perspective,
right.
You know, he
The,
kind of
the
brought you
risk
along
isn't
for that
as
journey.
quite as high.
Yeah.
I guess. Maybe.
No, the ending is him. That last slide he shows in his presentation.
Okay. I'm gonna.
And that is the final head fake.
What's the name of that book again? The Last Lecture?
The last
Yeah.
lecture. Randy Posh.
Randy Posh.
I think you would enjoy it.
I've heard of it. Yes.
yeah.
And you've
Yeah.
spoken about it
Mhm.
before. So
Yeah, it's amazing. You can borrow it today if you'd like.
And
All
I'm
right.
taking the
Look
book
at that.
shots.
You're taking the book shots? All right. Dealio. Whoever has my timekeeper, Mitch Abram, give it back.
Okay, and we got to fix that. It's album.
Mitch Album.
Yeah.
Sorry, Album.
In case Mitch is listening.
Yeah, right?
We want him to know we
Exactly.
know his name. At least I do, Mitch. Reach out to me, DeborahMung.com.
So
I love it.
Let's talk a little bit about bad endings.
Oh, come on, Mandra. Bring us home.
I think a couple things that happen is sometimes an author has just had it. You're done. You're spent. You feel like you need to wrap it up, but you don't necessarily put the same amount of time and care
Ooh.
into that ending.
You race right
God,
to
I
it,
hope she
huh?
doesn't mention one of my books now.
I know.
No,
Good thing
no.
my
Okay,
last
good.
chapter's
Yeah, we
not
already
written.
talked. I only have 2.
I can say I can kind of get that feeling though, because doing my first draft, the end is where I was like, I need to be done with this.
Right.
You know, there's more fragmented sentences. There's more like just get this over with so I can send it out and start the next phase.
Except,
so
truth be told, you have a fabulous ending. That's the cliff, right?
that is a cliff.
Yeah, so she did a beautiful, stunning ending.
Mm-hmm.
So good, I wanted her to go back and write more of the book that way. Sorry, side
Right.
note, back to your things.
Right. The other piece is that sometimes you have this protagonist and they're going through this struggle, and at the end of the book, it's somehow resolved, or they've quote unquote won. And, it was said somewhere that success is never as interesting as the struggle. So you have to be careful when you have this awesome struggle going through the whole book, and are they going to make it? And you're rooting for someone, and then, oh, look, things are good.
Right. They
survived.
tied it all up with a nice little bow.
Yeah, so it's a
And that's not
happy ending,
life.
but it's not necessarily a good ending.
Right.
Right.
Do you have examples of?
Well, I have a couple examples, not necessarily of that, but one example that came up was Alice in Wonderland, where it's some of the most creative and visually stunning, piece of work. But in the end, it's a very easy, well, it was all a dream.
See, I didn't even know that about that story. Isn't that Wizard of Oz, too?
And that kind of just pulls it all out from under you in a way, that you just went on this fantastic journey, saw all these amazing things, and then, it was just a dream.
I didn't even know that about the story. That disappoints me, actually.
I don't remember that about the story either, but that's because we took the story and we
story's way
tossed
better
the
than
ending.
Right. So it's kind of that, I've invested all from the reader's point of view, I've invested all this time, energy.
Belief.
I've stayed up late at night flipping through 300 pages, and at the end,
Right. Not good.
And the reader's not going to probably pick up another book by that author.
Right.
Another kind of classic example was The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And, the most of the book, Huck is spent trying to save Jim, the slave. And there's a lot of discussions about racism and that sort of thing that's happening in the South the whole time. And then at the very end, Huck meets back up with Tom, and they kind of fall back into their old ways, and they're teasing Jim and taunting him. So you've seen Huck kind of grow and develop a morality, and then at the end, no, we're back to his
Reverse?
child.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah. So when you have a character that you see grow, and then at the end you just kind of get thrown back to where they were in the beginning, then there is no real growth.
Boy.
I'll keep
You've got
that
some
in
good
mind.
You basically
examples
just
there.
shit on one of the
I
the number
know.
one selling book of all time.
I did.
But
So see, it was a bad ending, but it didn't apparently affect sales at all, because it
Yeah,
still
that's
is a
true.
classic. It's just that is one of the critiques of that book, that it doesn't seem to hold true all the way through, that
Right.
Huck is on this journey and then kind of just is an idiot at the end anyway.
Well, the dream thing always reminds me of Sixth Sense, the movie with Bruce Willis.
Yes.
That was not an unsatisfactory twist at the end. That was
Right.
amazing. So well done.
that was well done.
Yeah.
And maybe it can be done in a good way. Like
Right.
that,
Because I think
but-
The Wizard of Oz was a dream, wasn't it, at the end?
Mhm.
That she just wakes up. And you're right. So there you go on this fantastic journey that you want to believe actually happened.
Right. And it's all a dream.
All I wanted out of that movie were the slippers.
Yeah.
Jonathan, you
I
have
know.
those.
Of course you did.
You know you
I was
have
gonna
those.
say, don't
do
you
have
have them
those.
already in your closet? Are they on the floor or on the on the
Oh,
shoe rack?
Lord.
That's what I
Shoe rack.
want to know. All right.
On that note,
On that note, well, thank you all for listening, and be sure to check out the Writer's Block NH Facebook page and the Writer's Block podcast on your favorite podcast catcher. If you'd like to hear this episode again or share it with a friend, you can head on over to the UnitedPodcastNetwork.tv. That's UnitedPodcastNetwork.tv. Thank you for listening, and we hope to inspire and empower you to tell your own story.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Café, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.